The world of faith has always been filled with mystery, but sometimes heaven allows something so strange, so unexplainable, that even the most skeptical are forced to pause. As of June 2025, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle remains one of the most prominent figures in the Catholic Church. Following the intense and prayerful papal conclave that recently elected Pope Leo XIV, Cardinal Tagle, once whispered in sacred halls as a possible successor to Pope Francis himself, now continues his mission as the pro-prefect of the dicastery for evangelization, awaiting further appointments from the newly installed pope. Known across the world as the Asian Francis, Tagle's humble voice has resonated across continents, his heart for social justice and the poor echoing the very spirit of Pope Francis's own pastoral mission. In the growing heartbeat of the Church in Asia, his leadership has become a pillar, steady, compassionate, and deeply rooted in prayer. But while the Church moved forward, something else was quietly unfolding, far from Rome. Something not in any official bulletin, not in any Vatican press release, but whispered instead in the shadows where faith and mystery often collide. It began in an old, forgotten chapel, deep in the Philippine countryside. For decades, the doors of this tiny church remained shut, dust gathering on the cracked marble floor, its wooden pews rotting beneath broken stained glass. It was during a recent restoration, an innocent project led by local caretakers, that a hidden painting was uncovered behind a decaying altar wall. As the dust was cleared and the canvas revealed, the small group of restorers froze. Staring back at them was a face they all recognized instantly. It was the face of Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. But the painting was dated 1890. The dates made no sense. Cardinal Tagle was born nearly a full century later, in 1957. How could his face appear in a painting more than 60 years before his birth? The resemblance was not vague or coincidental, it was unmistakable. His eyes, his smile, the gentle but profound expression, it was him. The local bishop was alerted. Then word reached Manila. Eventually, the Vatican itself was quietly informed. Investigators arrived under the cover of night, attempting to examine both the painting's origin and the chapel's long-forgotten history. But the questions only grew. Who painted it? Why was it hidden? And perhaps most unsettling of all, was this merely a bizarre coincidence? Or was heaven revealing something far more profound? Soon, rumors began to swirl. Some whispered it was a sign, a prophetic image foretelling Cardinal Tagle's rising role in the Church. Others speculated on stranger theories, reincarnation, time anomalies, even divine intervention. Could this be connected to the secret messages of Fatima, to the long-guarded third secret, or to the private visions spoken of only behind Vatican walls? In a recent interview, Cardinal Tagle himself remained focused on his mission. He spoke humbly of Pope Leo XIV as a missionary shepherd who leads by listening. He shared his devotion to serve, to evangelize, and to follow God's will. Yet privately, some insiders suggest that when the cardinal was shown the painting, something changed. According to one unnamed source within the dicastery, Tagle spent over an hour in silent contemplation before the image, visibly moved. But what he whispered in prayer that day has never been made public. Then, things got stranger. During subsequent restorations of the chapel, workers discovered sealed scrolls hidden inside the base of the old altar, writings believed to be over 130 years old. Though many details remain classified by church officials, preliminary reports hint that the scrolls contained strange prophecies, referencing the servant born in the islands who will shepherd the scattered flock in the time of great shaking. Some phrases eerily resemble language found in certain Marian apparitions, language long associated with the last days. Word of the discovery spread rapidly through underground Catholic circles. Some believe the Vatican may already be quietly investigating whether these scrolls bear any authentic prophetic weight, or if they connect to other unexplained events unfolding inside the Church, events that many fear signal the purification and shaking prophesied for our time. Skeptics were quick to dismiss it all as coincidence. Others, however, could not ignore the weight of it. And then came another twist. Digital historians analyzing archival records of the artist responsible for the painting found notes indicating that the painter described a vision while working. A vision of a man from the islands bearing peace and light, called by the Spirit for a time not yet come. The painter himself died mysteriously months after completing the artwork. His final journal entry simply read, "He comes, but not in my lifetime." Now, as the world watches Pope Leo XIV and the rapidly shifting landscape inside the Vatican, this mysterious painting has become a point of intense debate, even inside the Curia itself. Is this all a distraction? Or is it a divine foreshadowing of Cardinal Tagle's future role, a role perhaps not yet fully revealed? And as more unusual reports continue to leak from inside Rome, the question grows louder. Is heaven trying to prepare us for something? Or has something already begun? As whispers multiplied across the Catholic world, the Vatican itself remained publicly silent. But behind closed doors, there was movement. Certain members of the Roman Curia reportedly requested private viewings of the 1890 painting. High-ranking theologians, archivists, and even a few unnamed cardinals were quietly flown to Manila under great discretion. Each visit shrouded in secrecy. No official statements were released, but insiders leaked fragments of their reactions, most described as visibly shaken, awed, or even disturbed. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Pope Leo XIV continued his delicate balancing act. Newly elected and stepping into one of the most turbulent moments for the Church in recent memory, his every decision was being watched. His vision for a purified Church, one stripped of corruption and guided by true pastoral leadership, was unfolding rapidly. But even within his inner circle, discussions about the painting reportedly made their way to the Holy Father's ears. And then came the sealed letter. Sources claim that a mysterious envelope, marked only with an ancient Marian symbol, was hand-delivered to the Pope's private secretary. The origin of the letter remains unknown, but inside were faded photographs of the painting, translations of the hidden scrolls, and a single chilling message written in Latin. Tempus eius nondum impletum est. Sed dies venit, vigila ecclesia. His time has not yet been fulfilled, but the day comes, watch, O Church. The meaning was unmistakable. A time was approaching, connected somehow to Cardinal Tagle and perhaps to the very purification the Church now faces. But what was this time? And why was it written over a century ago? As the story began to leak into Catholic media outlets and independent journalists, wild theories exploded across social platforms. Some saw it as proof that Cardinal Tagle was always destined to lead, that his role in the future of the Church was written long before his birth. Others feared it hinted at apocalyptic times, with Tagle as a key player in the unfolding of heaven's final plan for the Bride of Christ. But while debate raged online, something even more unsettling surfaced. A private collector in Europe came forward claiming to possess a second painting, one allegedly connected to the same artist who created the mysterious 1890 portrait. This second painting, long kept in a private chapel in southern France, depicted a scene even more cryptic. An empty throne, draped in white, surrounded by great storm clouds, while beams of light pierced through from above. In the lower right corner, barely visible, was a faint inscription, Et erit pastor Asiae, and he shall be a shepherd of Asia. The collector, whose identity remains undisclosed, reportedly offered the Vatican an opportunity to view and verify the painting. Vatican investigators were once again dispatched quietly. The significance was staggering. For decades, church prophecy experts had speculated about heaven's special attention to Asia in the final chapters of salvation history. Marian apparitions across the continent, from Akita in Japan to Lipa in the Philippines, carried warnings, promises, and messages of immense spiritual weight. And now, these paintings, seemingly tied to a forgotten 19th century artist, directly referenced both Asia and the very man who now stands among the church's most prominent leaders. But then, the most shocking revelation yet arrived. During a digital forensic analysis of the original 1890 painting, Advanced spectral imaging uncovered something hidden beneath the primary portrait layer. Beneath Cardinal Tagle's likeness, restorers found faint outlines of an earlier image, a bishop's mitre, a golden cross, and a Latin inscription reading Vicarius, Vicar. The implications were immediate and explosive. Some interpreted it as a reference to the papacy itself, the Vicar of Christ. Could this hidden layer suggest that Cardinal Tagle's destiny was not only to shepherd Asia, but to one day ascend the very throne of Peter? The Vatican, for its part, remains officially silent. Neither Pope Leo XIV nor Cardinal Tagle have commented directly on the growing storm surrounding the painting. But inside the Church, among those who study prophecy, visions, and the secret workings of divine providence, the debate has reached a fever pitch. For centuries, the Church has known of heaven's strange ways, of signs, of whispers, of visions given long before their time. The Fatima secrets, the warnings of Akita, the third secret still debated even today, all point to a world moving closer to a great reckoning. And now, as this ancient painting surfaces, pointing mysteriously to Cardinal Tagle's very face, decades before his birth, the faithful are left to wonder, is this coincidence, a hoax, or the unfolding of a heavenly plan far older, far deeper than any of us have imagined? And most chilling of all, what happens next? As Rome tried to contain the growing speculation, new voices began to emerge, voices from deep within the hidden corridors of the Vatican. Whispers of a secret commission were spoken of in hushed tones. A group of theologians, historians, and prophecy experts allegedly gathered under papal mandate, tasked with one purpose: to discern whether the strange events surrounding Cardinal Tagle were truly natural or supernatural. Within this secretive circle, known unofficially as the Watchers, heated debates broke out. Some argued that the appearance of Tagle's likeness in a century-old painting could not be dismissed as mere chance. Others cautioned against reading too much into it, warning of the dangers of drawing connections where none may exist. But in the center of the debate lay one undeniable fact. The scrolls found beneath the altar spoke of a coming upheaval within the Church itself, a time when the nations will rage and the shepherds will be sifted like wheat. One watcher, according to leaked transcripts, made a chilling observation. The one whose face was painted in silence may soon stand in the eye of the storm. Meanwhile, across the Catholic faithful worldwide, spiritual movements erupted. Pilgrimages to the forgotten Philippine chapel began in secret. Some came to pray, some came seeking answers. A few came bearing private prophecies of their own, claiming that visions had revealed to them that Cardinal Tagle would one day play a decisive role in the Church's greatest test. And then, as if heaven itself answered these rising questions, reports began surfacing from multiple visionaries and mystics across Asia and Europe. Independent of one another, they spoke of a recurring image, a shepherd clothed in simple garments, standing between two great pillars, one marked justice, the other mercy. Behind him, a great storm gathered. Before him, a blinding light broke through the clouds. These mystics, many of whom had no knowledge of the painting's discovery, described details eerily aligned with the imagery found in the newly uncovered scrolls and the second French painting. Sieur, Vatican's watchers took note, but it was what happened next that shook even the most cautious minds. In a quiet Dominican monastery near Fatima, an elderly nun, Sister Elena, who had lived in cloistered silence for over 40 years, suddenly broke her vow of silence. Without warning, she began speaking of visions she had kept secret since her youth. In her trembling voice, she described being shown a man from the east, marked by God to guide the Church through a red sea of trial, using words and imagery that mirrored both the hidden scrolls and the mysterious paintings. She named him Luis the Eye. Investigators were stunned. For years, Sister Elena's visions had been considered private, unverified, and locked away by her spiritual directors. But now, with the convergence of so many independent signs, the coincidences became harder to dismiss. Was God allowing the puzzle pieces, long scattered across continents and decades, to suddenly fall into place? And as Rome wrestled with these mounting signs, another twist emerged, one far closer to the Holy See itself. A secret memorandum, leaked from within the Vatican archives, detailed a 1970s conversation between a young archbishop from Manila and a Vatican prophecy researcher. In that meeting, the archbishop described an old Filipino legend of a child of the islands, chosen by heaven to help the church navigate a coming storm of division and spiritual deception. The researcher noted chillingly that the archbishop spoke of this prophecy with unusual certainty, decades before Cardinal Tagle was ever ordained. This ancient legend, now resurfacing alongside the painting, scrolls, visions, and the mysterious French artwork, painted a picture more intricate and terrifying than anyone could have anticipated. The pattern was emerging, a convergence of prophecy. A man unknown to history's painters, yet painted. A man unknown to seers of old, yet seen. A man unknown to secret legends, yet spoken of. And now, standing quietly within the very heart of the church, beneath the towering dome of St. Peter's Basilica, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle continues his quiet, humble ministry, smiling, listening, serving. Yet even as he speaks softly of faith and evangelization, the storm clouds gather behind him. The church quivers on the edge of an unknown chapter, and far beyond what cameras see, behind locked Vatican doors, the watchers prepare their final report, a document that, if ever made public, could shake the faithful to their core. Because the deeper they dig, the more unsettling the conclusion becomes. The painting was never an accident. The scrolls were never lost. The visions were never isolated, and Cardinal Tagle's role may have been written by heaven long before his first breath on earth. What is coming, no one is prepared for, not yet, but heaven moves. The clock ticks, and soon, the final piece may be revealed. And as the hands of heaven's clock moved silently forward, an even more terrifying layer of the mystery emerged, one that connected not only Cardinal Tagle, but the very foundations of the church itself. For years buried within the deepest vaults beneath the Vatican, far below the Apostolic Palace, rested the sealed archives of long-forgotten prophecies, many of them deemed too dangerous or too incomprehensible for public release. Within these archives, known only to the most trusted members of the secret archive prefecture, was stored a lost parchment dated 1891, 1 year after the mysterious painting of Tagle's likeness had first appeared. The parchment contained a cryptic vision written by a now unknown mystic whose name was erased from the document, perhaps intentionally. But what survived was the message, one that Vatican archivists had long ignored until now. The parchment read, "From the islands shall rise the son of the dove. In the days of 2 popes, when the world trembles and nations roar, he shall be called to stand in the breach. Upon his brow shall rest the keys not yet his, but prepared for him before the stars sang. In the twilight of Peter's throne, his name shall echo as the storm divides the bride. The son of the dove." The reference struck terror into the hearts of those studying the document. For Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle was born in the Philippines, whose very national symbol is the dove, and the mention of the days of 2 popes eerily paralleled. The recent years when Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis both lived, a rare period of dual papal presence that had not occurred for centuries. Was the parchment pointing directly to this generation, to this moment, to Tagle? As these revelations converged, one final sign arrived, not from man, but from heaven itself. On a stormy evening over Rome, as lightning illuminated the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, eerily reminiscent of the bolt that struck the dome the night Pope Benedict announced his resignation, an unprecedented celestial event unfolded. A blood-red moon appeared, casting an ominous hue over the Vatican, while an unusual alignment of stars formed what several astronomers described as resembling the shape of a shepherd's crook piercing the heavens. Within hours, mystics across multiple nations reported receiving the same message in their private prayer. He stands at the threshold. The shaking shall begin. The shepherd is marked. News of this final sign sent shockwaves through the underground channels of faithful prophecy. Watchers, many of whom had been quietly documenting the unfolding mystery. Priests, scholars, and visionaries now whispered what few dared speak publicly: that Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle may not simply be a servant within the Vatican hierarchy, but the man divinely chosen for the hour when the world and the Church itself would face its greatest test. The rumors spread like wildfire. Some spoke of the approaching Great Schism, others feared the rise of the false prophet. But all eyes turned toward Rome and toward Tagle. And as he walked silently through the marble halls of the Vatican, beneath the ancient frescoes and mosaics that had witnessed centuries of history, his presence carried a strange weight, as though even the very stones beneath his feet recognized him. Then, in an unannounced private audience, Pope Leo XIV summoned Cardinal Tagle. The two men spoke alone, without scribes or cameras. No record exists of their conversation. But witnesses said that as Tagle exited the apostolic palace hours later, his face was pale, his eyes moist, as if having glimpsed a burden far heavier than any earthly title. What was spoken in that chamber remains known only to God and to those two men, but one thing was now certain. The painting was no longer simply a mystery of the past. It had become a warning for the future, a prophecy unfolding before our very eyes, a heavenly script written before time itself. And as the world spirals toward wars, division, apostasy, and the long foretold days of trial, the question remains suspended like a sword above the Church. Is Cardinal Tagle destined to lead the faithful through the coming storm, or is he the final piece in a plan far more terrifying than any have yet imagined? The winds of prophecy howl, the bride of Christ trembles, and somewhere deep in the silence of prayer, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle kneels, waiting, because heaven has already chosen, and the hour is far closer than we think. The shaking has begun.